We're back. This week, we're talking about Bloodshot Records. You're listening to Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek. Welcome to the podcast. If there was a single record label that dominated my listening life in the early 90s through the 2000s, it was Bloodshot Records. So Bloodshot Records was founded in 1993 in Chicago, Illinois. By that time, I was out of law school and I think living in Columbia, Missouri, but I don't think I really started listening to Bloodshot albums until I moved up to Chicago the year after that. It was founded by two people, Rob Miller and Nan Warshaw, who were they were very large in the independent music scene. Kind of the Chicago had this weird punk country scene, and I'm sure other cities did as well. But they got together and decided that they wanted to try to put some of these bands on record, and that's how when they created Bloodshot Records. And if there's any kind of testament to how important that little tiny label was for at least a period of time, is I read in Wikipedia that after his death, people went through Kurt Cobain's diaries. They were posthumously published in 2002, and one of the diaries included this mention. It said, "Call Nan Warshaw," and it was on his to-do list. And I suppose if you are into the alternative music scene or alternative music history, that says quite a bit about Nan Warshaw and Bloodshot Records.
That's cool. I did not know that.
I didn't either. I was trying to get some just tidbits of information about the album. I was trying to figure out the chronology. So, as I said, it was founded in 1993. Their very first release was a compilation, and it was just a collection of these bands that would play in and around Chicago. It was titled For a Life of Sin, a compilation of insurgent Chicago country. It came out in 1994. I know I bought it that year, and I know that I put at least 2 or 3 songs from that compilation album on the traveling playlist you and I were working on over that year and probably into the next year. They put out another compilation only a few years after that called Hellbent, and that subtitle was Insurgent Country Volume 2. So they really kind of thrived on this idea of being outlaws, not outlaw country, which is a whole nother genre or subgenre of country, but basically this kind of punk-infused country music that was under the radar at that time and certainly wasn't being played, wasn't being recorded in Nashville and wasn't really being played on general radio. Because at that time, who were the big country stars? It was like, I don't know, Clint Black, and, it was all those guys that, were kind of just boring, smooth country singers.
Was it something with hats? They were just, the lyrics were empty, the music was boring, but by comparison, yes, very different sound and feel and attitude coming out of Chicago through Bloodshot. And my favorite album still that they put out, and I think the first one of theirs that I bought, was The Bottle Let Me Down, which is the kids compilation album. Essentially, it's called a kids album. But from that album, and I can't quite recall if this was my first listen to a lot of them, but the first song's just kicks. It's Red Red Robin by Rosie Flores. Alejandro Escovedo had a great song on there. Robbie Fulks, the Cornell Hurd Band, who I got into, the Handsome Family, who were fantastic. And then there's some others I didn't know, like the Asylum Street Spankers, the Waco Brothers, just a great collection of artists and really fun. We've talked about the Pixar movies. That was one of my first experiences where I could listen to a song and get into it, and my kids would be in the back seat just as excited to listen to the music coming out of my car radio. So that was my, I still have that CD because I like that album so much.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't remember exactly when that came out. I know it was after the first two compilations, but it
2002.
was it 2002?
Yeah,
Yeah, that one was a lot of fun because they were all bands that I was at least relatively familiar with because they were Bloodshot bands. They put out, they'd at least been on some of those compilation records, if not had their own albums on Bloodshot. And it was really a lot of fun. 2002 was the year my daughter was born, so it probably was another year or two before I was playing songs from that album for her. But I love the fact that they were kind of, it felt like they were kind of like in the same stage of their lives as we were in terms of already having kids, worrying about having music for kids that wasn't just boring nursery rhyme type stuff.
totally agree.
So the nice thing for me was that because Bloodshot was a Chicago business, and because they a lot of the bands that were on the label had migrated to Chicago because there was a scene there for them to play their music. I got to see a lot of those bands live too. I got to see Robbie Folks play in at the Abbey in Chicago. I got to see Waco Brothers play in a outdoors in a strip mall in the suburbs of Chicago. That was the one where John Langford, the leader of the Waco Brothers, complained that they had to hitch a ride to get to the show, but the Absolute Vodka sponsor of the bar had its own bus. I got to see a lot of those bands play live, and that just kind of confirmed how much I like that music because, frankly, as good as they are recorded, a lot of these bands are even better when you get to see them live because there's just so much energy. I would go to the Hideout in Chicago and watch bands play the Abbey, which isn't around anymore. Fitzgerald's would have a lot of those bands. Alejandro would play at Fitzgerald's annually, at least once a year, if not more. I probably saw him 3 or 4 times play there. So I was at that period of time when Bloodshot first came out. I really kind of immersed myself in that music. It's one of the reasons I became such an alt country Americana fan because I got to see them live. I got to buy their albums. I subscribed to No Depression, which was a magazine about that scene. It came, once a month and then eventually once every other month. And then eventually it died because I was probably one of 3 subscribers. But I was really into all that stuff and really enjoyed listening to that music. And I'm sure it showed in our traveling mixtapes because I was putting Bloodshot performers probably practically every song I would put on a mixtape that you and I were exchanging back and forth would be somebody from Bloodshot or somebody new from Bloodshot.
Yeah, and the beauty and the curse of the compilations was you'd hear a song, and I felt like they had some of the ones that were truly on the edge of punk and country. So you'd hear just a rockin' or just something that was closer to punk than any other stuff we were listening to, and then you go try to find that sound because these bands didn't always have the same sound. I mean, that was obviously them, but when you go and get an album, they're not everything's gonna sound the same. So
Right.
that kept me seeking out, new and different artists. So, and I didn't buy a lot of other labels compilations. There was
Right.
something had a high, seemed may not be fair to say this, but it seemed to be at a higher quality. I mean, I was into that sound. So there were very few songs that I didn't like. There were always a couple, but if there were 20 songs on it, I would guess that about 15 I really liked and the other five were okay. And then there were a couple that were so good that I was out getting the albums. Like I said, a lot of these bands, you named a couple like Alejandro Escoveda, Corey Brannon, the legendary Shack Shakers. There's others we'll talk about as we go on, but I heard them first on Bloodshot and then went out and, as I do, bought their whole collection of stuff. So,
Well, and the funny thing, and I guess the thing that really dates us is that's how we had to find out about those other bands because there was no streaming music. I mean, that's basically the time when Napster was invented.
yeah.
Like I had a dial-up modem in my house, and I would be staring at a computer screen from about 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. because it was the time when songs would download the fastest on that modem. but it was Napster was your only way to find new music online. Otherwise, it was still a record store thing. You had to go to the record store and you'd have to ask people if they had, an Alejandro Escobedo album or anything along those lines. So you didn't get to hear new music just because there was an algorithm that said, hey, if you like this, you're going to like this. It's so funny to me to think back at that time. I was living in Manhattan, Illinois, in this tiny little 2-bedroom house, again, before I had kids. And I can't tell you how many hours I spent, in the middle of the night staring at a screen, just watching that bar slowly fill up because it was downloading some crazy live version of a Johnny Cash song that some country band was playing. And I would then you download those, burn those to a CD. I would send that CD to you and say, hey, you got to listen to these guys. But all of that was happening at the same time. Napster was beginning, but record stores were still a big deal. It was still the best way to find music. So, anytime I saw something with the Bloodshot had a very distinctive logo, if I saw that, there was a 75% chance I was just going to buy it without even hearing a song from it, just because you trusted them. I've never met Nan Warshaw or Rob Miller, but I trusted their taste in music. It felt like they had the same musical taste that I had. They seemed to really care about the music they were putting out, and I think that had a lot to do with your response, my response to those compilations, and finding so much of that music to be really good was because they cared about it, and they were, and we seemed to have the same kind of sensibility as far as that was concerned.
And what's interesting is I was trying to think about this when you were talking about it. Like, name another like sort of regional genre-driven label like that. I mean, they carved out their own space, and there are certainly others. I mean, I just looked, like Alligator, also out of Chicago, but I thought that was more bluesy. So you try to
much
look
more
at
blues in like New Orleans and what have you. And then there was Sub Pop, which I didn't get into, but
right.
that was the grunge label, and they had that kind of impact, I think, regionally as well, and predated Bloodshot. And maybe, I don't know, it'd be interesting. I wonder if we could find Rob Miller or Nan Warshaw and interview them. It'd be interesting to know how much they based their business model on some of those older labels that were very, very specific, very genre specific. So Bloodshot was around, as I said, founded in 1993. In October of 2021, Rob Miller posted a message basically saying they were closing the label. Prior to that, a year or two prior to that, Nan Warshaw had left the label, basically following some kind of incident. And in fact, I think there were multiple incidents that involved her partner, not business partner, but I think her boyfriend, or I don't think they were married. And it appears to have been a Me Too situation. There were a lot, I think, of allegations of sexual harassment and what have you that involved her husband. So she left the label as a result of that. Rob Miller ran it for a while after that, but I want to say it was, according to Wikipedia, it was October 22nd, 2021. He sold Bloodshot Records to another label called Acceleration Music. So since then, they have not put out any music. In early 2023, Acceleration announced that they would be releasing new recordings on the Bloodshot label soon. Unfortunately, I still haven't seen any new Bloodshot songs or albums, but I have my fingers crossed that A, they're going to do that, and B, that Rob Miller is involved in some way, because again, I think those two individuals really drove Bloodshot. And I imagine it would be a much different type of record label if neither of them is involved at all. So fingers crossed, we may see some new Bloodshot. The rumor is that some of the old Bloodshot artists are going to be involved in this new version of the label, and I am looking forward to that happening.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I hope that some of the founders are involved, because we've seen other labels get taken over and they just sort of lose the spirit when just calling it that doesn't make it that. So
right, yeah.
So hoping for the best. IQ, I'm looking forward to, because we talk about record stores, especially with staff picks, and I didn't have to see Bloodshot up on the board. If I saw that, icon, that label, and they'd put out the 5-year, the 10-year, and they do all those anniversary releases, and those are always something that we would buy even when there started being more streaming options available to us. At least I did.
Yep. I've got those CDs, even though I don't have many places to play them.
All right. With season 7, Tom and I have decided to introduce a new segment. We'll see how often we do it, but this one lends itself perfectly to what we want to do, which is do a draft. So Tom and I will draft artists who were on Bloodshot. And we are going to choose a number between 1 and 10. I will then ask Google to generate a number between 1 and 10. Whoever's closest either gets to go first, where they get obviously the first pick, or second, where you get the next 2 picks. And then we'll go back and forth. We will draft 5 total bands, and then we will post it to our website, hopefully, and see if we can get people to pick who got the best draft. Did I miss anything, Thomas?
I think that is going to work. I think that's the way to go.
All right. I will choose 3 between 1 and 10.
You chose 3, the number 3? That doesn't sound... I will choose 28. No, that doesn't work. Oh, I'm going to pick 7.
9.
The tension is killing me. I get to go first. Or wait, I get to decide, right? So it's like a kickoff.
You do.
So I am going to, I'm choosing to select 2nd and 3rd. We're going to do a serpentine draft. Yeah, see? Chris is making faces. He's upset. I stole
I'm not
strategy.
just making faces. I'm calling you a motherfucker.
Oh, you must have been muted there. So that means that you get to pick, however, the number 1 Bloodshot artist of all time in our inaugural draft.
Yeah, this is a tough one. That's why I was hoping to go second. But I am going to choose the old 97s.
I will tell you that they were first on my list.
Nice. At least I stole something from you, you bastard.
You did. You did. I actually did not think you were going to pick them first. You've blown my whole strategy to hell.
Well, I will say this, and we won't talk too much about the artists, but old 97s have gone on to be, pretty top tier Americana or alternative country band. So great live act. We saw them down in Texas.
Yeah, so I've seen them 3 or 4 times. I saw them in a Chicago Street Festival once where nobody knew who they were, and they had the crowd was just out of their minds after like the 2nd song. A lot of fun. All right, so because you stole old 97s from me, I am going to, I believe, steal your next pick, which is I am going to go with Alejandro Escovedo, which is who I thought you were going to pick first. And I'm also going to select Bottle Rockets. I want a rockin' band there. So those are my 2 picks.
So then I get the next 2. I'm going to go with one you might not have thought about, but I'm going with Bobby Bear Jr.
I did think about him.
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure where are you going to take him, because I figure you're trying to steal shit from me instead of just taking your choices. This is a tough one, but I'm going to take Ha Ha Tonka. Yeah, they probably could have held, but I'm not playing the game. I'm just choosing my favorite artist.
Yep. Well, for whatever it's worth, my top 2 artists on my list or actually top 2 or top 3 were old 97s and Bobby Bear Jr. So the next guy on my list is Justin Townes Earl.
Nice.
And then I am going to go with, this is tough. So I don't think I came up with a very coherent strategy because I'm trying to decide whether I want to pick the performers that were like the most important to me, particularly back in that time, or who I listen to more now. And that is a problem for me. So Justin Townes Earl is definitely both of those things. And then I have to decide between 3 bands. And I am going to I'm going to go off the board here because I want to mix it up on my thinking about it in terms of a playlist. I'm going to go with J.C. Brooks and the Uptown Sound.
Holy cow. I don't know who
Yeah.
that is.
Oh no? Oh,
No.
dude. They're great. Again, seen him live in Chicago. He's much more of a soul sound. It's not really classic Bloodshot Records, but they put out maybe their first album on Bloodshot. They do an amazing cover of "I'm Trying to Break Your Heart" by Wilco. It is it's got horns. It's got this kind of cool, almost Detroit soul sound, and it's definitely off of the beaten track, at least as far as Bloodshot's concerned. But I think it would make I think one of their songs would really be cool on a playlist with these other bands.
All
So
right. So is that
I,
both?
that's both. So you pick two, and then I pick one. Right? We're doing
Yeah.
five
Yeah.
each.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was afraid that one would not be left for me, but I'm going with Corey Brannon. He is, I've talked way too much about him, but I'm glad he was there. And then I'm hopefully stealing someone from you. I'm going with Nico Case.
I like Nico Case. However, a little further down my list, so I get to pick the final one, huh? Oh, see, and
Yeah.
even this, I'm conflicted, but I got to go with Robbie Folk.
Yeah. I thought you'd take him much higher.
The only reason I didn't is because I assumed you would not pick Robbie Folk, so I thought
And
he'd be hanging around.
the only reason I didn't is one, I don't like him as much, and two, I don't want to dick you over totally. So,
Well, I appreciate that. That's very nice of you. So tell me who else, like who would be your next pick?
yeah, I think Lydia Lovelace would probably be my next. And I'll just say one more. The one that I struggled with because I really like what they should be, but they've never put out an album that I truly love is the legendary Shack Shakers. I
Hmm.
mean, they have some of the craziest just punk, almost like they're not screaming, but they just fly. Their songs are so good, but not, I shouldn't say they're so good. They're so exciting, but then they just, I don't know. I just don't feel like they've ever put it all together. I'm sure they'd be great live. I just don't love their albums.
Yeah, I'd like to see them live because I'm not a giant fan of theirs. I feel like there's just a song or two that I really like,
Yeah,
and anything else I've listened to is just okay. But I bet you they're a great live band. They
yeah.
seem like they would just be awesome in person.
What about you? Who else? Who's next on your list?
So there are two the two that are next on the list. One of them is Paul Birch, who I
Hmm.
don't know if you and I have talked about him a lot, but I love his style. He is not really a punk infused country guy. He feels more kind of it's almost smooth country with him. He's got kind of a cool old fashioned voice. And I really like Paul Birch, and I almost picked him instead of Robbie Fulks. But again, just in terms of historically and the number of times I've listened to songs by an artist, Robbie Fulks is way higher than Paul Birch. But that was where I was struggling for that final pick. The other thing is the band The Silos had an album on Bloodshot, and they were really close to the top of this
Yeah.
list as well. And then there's a lot of Kelly Hogan and Nico Case. Those they were right there as well. It's funny. I don't think either of us even leaned toward picking Ryan Adams, even though there was a time where we would have been. He might have been number one choice, right? I think that's kind of funny.
Well, when Whiskey Town was on there, I mean, they put out
Yeah.
something on. I mean, so yeah, I kept looking past that. I'm like, nope, I'm not taking it.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I felt the same way. But the purpose in this draft, other than us just rambling on about like name dropping bands we like, is that I think you and I would both recommend that people look these bands up.
Yeah,
I when we get to things like our playlist and that kind of thing, we may be recommending specific songs. But truthfully, if I look at this list of 10 performers of 10 bands, I don't think you can go wrong. There's rarely a bad song amongst them. And I would suggest highly that you look them up. We'll put them up on the website. We'll probably put the
yeah,
list up on the as mentioned page. And then again, I'm guessing as we go through the remaining part of this episode, you'll probably hear some specific songs that we're recommending.
yeah. That was fun. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed taking your number one pick.
You did too. You just grabbed him. That was definitely going to be first. I thought for sure you were going to pick Alejandro, and I felt like he was more at risk for both of us. I feel like one of us was definitely going to take him,
Yep.
whereas I knew I was going to sneak J.C. Brooks. I probably should have even put them further down the list, but I wasn't 100% sure.
First draft is in the books, and that'll take us to our recommendations. So I guess now 2 seasons ago, Tom and I started where we would go with a decade. So the first episode we would pick from the first year, the 01 year in the decade, all the way through the beginning of the next decade. So we are into the decade of was it the aughts, the
Yes,
2000s?
the odds.
And our recommendations are from the year 2001. Why don't you start us out, Tom?
So I looked at music and was overwhelmed by the amount of music that came out in 2001, including Bloodshot stuff. So I decided to veer off. I was pretty sure that you were going to pick a song or an album for our 2001 recommendation. So I decided to go with a film, mainly because I think it's kind of underappreciated. I mean, you see it streaming occasionally, but there's a movie directed by Rod Lurie called The Last Castle. And it's a Robert Redford movie. It might be the last good Robert Redford role, in my opinion. James Gandolfini was in it, and I think this was pre-Sopranos, maybe just before Sopranos. So I don't think he was famous, but he plays the bad guy. Mark Ruffalo is in it, supporting role. Robert Redford plays this this U.S. Army general who is sentenced to prison, to a military prison, for behavior in battle, some mistake, some error he made that cost a lot of servicemen's lives. So he's sentenced to prison, and the story is about him kind of facing off against the warden of the prison, who is played by James Gandolfini, who thinks of himself as a combat veteran, even though all he's basically been is an administrator of a prison for the last 20 years of his career. Anyway, it's Robert Redford decides to take a stand to protect the other prisoners in the prison. They're treated horribly, and he basically wants them to kind of, I don't know, comport themselves as military men, and remember the oath they took when they became soldiers, even though they've all been convicted of one crime or another. It's just a really good ensemble film. Obviously, Redford is the lead, and he does a great job in this film. But Gandolfini plays a really good bad guy. Mark Ruffalo and the other characters who kind of end up surrounding Robert Redford and becoming his, in quotes, army, are just really good together. And it's a really fun movie to watch. So that came out in 2001. I recommend it highly. I'm not sure where it's streaming right now, but if you can find it, I would recommend watching The Last Castle.
I think I saw that movie, but I don't remember. So I'll go back and watch it. At least
Yeah,
I'll
I
say
think
I'll watch it.
you'll at least say that. But I think you really like that one, actually. I think it's right up your alley, to tell you the truth.
So my choice is, of course, an album. And I did the opposite. I thought there were a lot of really great movies that came out. So I went to music, and there were quite a few great albums, including Rodney Crowell's Houston Kid, which I did not pick, but I just wanted to say Rodney Crowell's name because I say him all the time. No, I chose the Drive By Truckers Southern Rock Opera, which I think is the album. Like I really liked a couple other albums before this one came out, but this one just seemed to establish them as a band with like huge vision, huge ambitions. Not, to be arena rock stars, but to be a significant band with themes and depth. And this one drives it. I mean, it's a double album. It's a concept album. It's just it has some of my favorite songs still to this day by the Truckers. Let There Be Rock is one of those great name dropping albums, talking about several of the artists who passed away, and death, for better or worse, is a theme on here. So there's the song "Shut Up and Get on the Plane," which is about Leonard Skinner and their unfortunate plane crash. And the opening song, well, it's not a song, the opening opening word is it? It's not a song, it's a spoken piece, is about the car wreck. High school kids out driving too fast, car wreck, and they pull up and you can hear a song, still playing on the radio. And that one really hit me because I think we all probably knew someone in high school, at least I know I did, who died in a car crash. It's very haunting, very powerful song. But, we talked about looking through the list of Bloodshot record artists, just taking a look at the 20 songs on this album. Some stuff that's a little controversial, I think. The three great Alabama icons, which at least sings about George Wallace, but also Bear Bryant, and a third one I can't remember. And then the Southern thing I will finish with, because Skinner sung joyously about Southern pride. Drive-By Truckers took it to a more complex level, talking about the good and the bad, and that the legacy contains both, and that while there's a lot of good to celebrate, there's a lot of really bad associated with the South. So it's embracing the legacy for what it truly is, and that's one of many, many great songs on the Truckers' Southern rock opera from 2001.
Yeah, in fact, isn't that the album where Patterson Hood makes reference? He actually says something like the whole duality of the South thing, or the dual,
Yeah.
like it's a spoken word part of a song, or maybe it's that very opening. I don't think it was the
Yep.
opening bit, but he definitely was thinking about that. And we were already Truckers fans by then, because they probably already had 6 or 8 albums out by that time, including at least one live album. They were famous for being just a great live performing band. But that's the one that I feel like caught everybody's attention. The rock critics raved about it. It was on a ton of people's top 5 lists. Rolling Stone, I know, raved about it, I recall specifically. And it did seem to turn a corner for them, because they were a long-standing band already by the time they put out Southern Rock Opera, but it kind of felt like everything they had done up to that point was leading to doing this double album where they had something, I think, pretty significant to say.
Yeah, and that line is in the Southern thing, and it's proud of the glory, stare down the shame, duality of the Southern thing.
Yeah, that's what it was. It's such a cool line, such a great
Yeah.
song. That's a great recommendation. I agree with you wholeheartedly that people should listen to that. Which brings us to Post Facto.
It's a mistake. It's a mistake.
Post Facto is a chance for us to correct mistakes if we've made them, also to provide additional information about stuff we've mentioned in earlier episodes. I don't have a lot. I don't believe I've made at least no glaring errors in the last episode or two. I did mention and make as a staff pick a couple episodes ago the film The Electric State, which is now streaming on Netflix. When I recommended it, it hadn't come out yet. And I was talking about the fact that it was based upon this really cool graphic novel that just visually was astounding. I love this. Simon Stålenhag is the name of the person who created the graphic novel. And I was really curious about The Electric State. It came out to horrible, horrible reviews across the board. All the critics seemed to hate the movie. I looked up ratings before we recorded today. The IMDb rating is 6 out of 10. It's got a 14% Rotten Tomatoes score, which I'm no math wizard, but that doesn't seem very high. Screen Rant gave it a 4 out of 10. It's got a 30% rating with Metacritic. So no professional film critics seem to like it at all. I didn't hate it, but I will say I don't think it did the source material justice. There's a couple scenes, like they're wide open panoramic scenes, where you could tell they relied upon the graphic novel, and the imagery is really cool. But the actual the movie itself is just okay. It's just kind of a boring sci-fi movie. It kind of feels like, if it wasn't based upon this fairly well-regarded source material, and if it didn't cost them $320 million to make it, it would just be one of those sci-fi movies that you come across on Netflix that maybe you watch or maybe you don't. It had Chris Pratt is a lead in it, and the girl from Stranger Things who played, what's her name? Seven? Is she Seven? Is that who she is?
You're looking at me like I've ever watched Stranger Things.
I'm surprised you haven't watched
Look in another direction.
Millie Bobby Brown, who is kind of a Netflix fixture, is the other. She's the star. She's the lead of the movie, and she does fine, but it's just okay. And I was really looking forward to it because I really love that book so much. So I did want to mention that in post facto. I did indicate that once I saw the film, I would come back and give my opinion. That's my opinion. I think the critics pretty much got it right.
Yeah, so one of our favorite guests and also one of our most loyal listeners, and the one who's most likely to give us feedback, especially when we mess up, is Jope. And his reaction to our Canada episode, which hasn't quite got the audience we were hoping for in Canada, is that we forgot about the movie Canadian Bacon, a Michael Moore movie starring John Candy, the great John Candy, Alan Alda, Ray Perlman, and Kevin Pollak. The reason we forgot about it, at least I did, is I've never seen it. Sorry, Jope.
Oh. No, I'll take Joe's criticism directly to heart because I should have mentioned that as a classic Canadian. Not only is it starring a Canadian actor, John Candy, but also about the U.S. invading Canada, which unfortunately is not nearly as funny now as it was way back when that movie came out. But it probably should have been mentioned in our Canada episode. So thanks, Joe.
Appreciate it, man. I will actually watch that one. That way I can tell Joe that I watched one of the movies he recommended.
Yeah. And then you can tell me you still haven't watched anything I've recommended.
Oh, yeah, that's a given. All right, that brings us to our staff picks. Just around the corner from you. Staff picks, I already mentioned this a little bit earlier, is our attempt to recreate what happened back in the day when you go into the record store, video store, DVD store, whatever you call it. And the staff at the stores would make recommendations, usually of newer material, if you hadn't had a chance for it to build up a reputation. So here's Tom and I's attempt to be record store staff members.
Our dream jobs.
Our dream jobs.
My staff pick for this episode is a documentary about a musician named Ike Riley. It just came out at the end of 2024. It's called Don't Turn Your Back on Saturday Night, directed by Michael O'Brien. It's actually produced by Tom Morello, who is, Tom Morello is Rage Against the Machine. He's the leader of that band, the singer, etc. Weirdly, Tom Morello and Ike Riley are good friends who both grew up in Libertyville, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. In the documentary, you find out that two other people that grew up in Libertyville, one of them, Marlon Brando. The other one, who was also a friend of Morello and Ike Riley, is Chris Farley. So I'm astounded that that little sleepy suburb has all of these tremendous performers and artists that came from it. But Ike Riley is a musician I've talked about before. One of his bands is called the Ike Riley Assassination. During COVID, he and his three sons did streaming performances from his house, and they were fantastic. And this isn't necessarily just about that. It's really about him. It's a very biographical type of documentary. It kind of starts at the beginning with him. He's an interesting guy. He's clearly a tough guy to live with. He's a temperamental artist type, but he's also crazy talented. And I've seen him live. I just saw him live last summer, and I can't say enough about this documentary. I recommend it. If we were giving egg burritos these days, I would give it 5 out of 5 egg burritos with sour cream. It's streaming on Tubi, which I think means with commercials. I actually ended up buying it for $4.99 from Apple TV, and I think it was worth every nickel. So I highly recommend it. Don't Turn Your Back on Saturday Night, the documentary about Ike Riley.
I'm going to save you a post facto. While Tom Morello is the lead guitarist for Rage Against the Machine, Zach De La Rocha is the lead singer.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Thanks for the correction.
You're welcome. And that's a good band. And I mean, Tom Morello's sung on other stuff. He's a fantastic artist. So
yeah, he's
I
really
feel
good
bad
friends with
correcting.
Springsteen these days. He's done a lot with Springsteen, I know.
Yes. All right. And then my staff pick is actually Tom's other staff pick because he chose it first and I was going to choose it. And then Tom watched this documentary. So mine is a new album by Mike Ferris, former lead singer of the Screamin' Cheetah Wheelies, which apparently is stolen from a Far Side comic strip, which makes me like the band even more. As Tom knows, I listened to them all the time back in the day. They were pretty solid. They weren't great, but they were fun to listen to. Good Southern rock stuff. Mike Ferris has taken a fairly circuitous path to this album. He did a bunch of religious stuff a couple years ago. At least one of his albums won awards. Several of his albums have won awards, and I think he recently won a Grammy for one of his solo albums. His album before this one of my favorites. He's moved a little more towards secular music, still having some of the religious tones to it. And then this one, The Sound of Muscle Shoals, seems to be a natural progression for him, where he seems returning a little bit to his Southern roots. Tom, I agree with him, says it's very reminiscent of the Subdudes, which is a band that both of us like quite a bit. And these are again Tom's words, but I fully agree. He summed it up better than I do. There's lots of horns and sort of a breezy energy to the album. So I definitely recommend you check it out. Mike Ferris is, I think, an underrated singer, and I'm glad that he's able to sort of start putting out material that's worthy of his voice.
Yeah, I've been listening to this album over the last 2 weeks. I've probably listened to it 4 or 5 times. Really, really love the music, love him. Not a big fan or not even very aware of the Screaming Cheetah Wheelies in terms of listening to their music. I know the band name, but I wouldn't be able to pick out a song. But I really, really enjoy this album, this solo album by Mike Ferris.
All righty. Those are our staff picks for season 7 premiere episode, which then finally takes us to our playlist picks. And this is what has driven this podcast from the beginning. Tom and I put out a playlist for each season, and we choose a song a piece, ideally represent the theme, ideally also to highlight a fairly unknown artist if that's the case. And this one, as you might not be surprised, both of us chose songs from Bloodshot artists. Easy for me to say. I will start. I chose, and I almost drafted this band, but I didn't. The band is the Yawpers, Yawpers. I will go back at some point as a post facto and tell you where the name came from. It's a cool story. It's from some poem. And the song is Burdens, and that's from their 2015 album, The American Man. It happens to be the 3rd song in on that album. And it's just it captures the sound of this band as well as any of their music. It's about being 17 and stuck in a town and wanting to get out. And it's just a great coming of age, sort of in a twisted way type of album or song. Nice and catchy and great way to start off our playlist for season 7.
Yep, very good first song for the season 7 playlist. My choice for the playlist is an old 97s song. So I went with the number 1 pick in the draft. The album is Wreck Your Life, which Bloodshot put out in 1995. The song, also 3rd song in of that album, is Doreen. Old 97s are awesome. They're just tremendous energy, both in their records and when you see them play live. And I think we're starting out pretty high energy on this playlist for season 7. You can stream our music playlist wherever you do stream your music: Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, YouTube Music. You can find our season playlist for seasons 1 through 6. You can find special playlists, which we tend to curate with our guests when they come and visit. And all of that stuff can be found, as I said, wherever you stream your music. Please share those playlists, listen to them, download them, and enjoy. Third Song In is recorded in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and Joliet, Illinois. You can email us your questions and comments to thirdsongin@gmail.com. We would ask that you follow us wherever you listen to your podcast, rate and review us. Give us all your goddamn stars, would you? You can find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, on Amazon Music, and YouTube Music. Please share the podcast with other people. Talk to other people about the podcast. Download the podcast. Do anything you can with the podcast that could be done with the podcast.
And check out our website, thirdsonginpodcast.com. You'll be able to access all of our recommendations, our staff picks. On our As Mentioned site, on our As Mentioned page, we'll include our draft results. If you want to send us a note as to who had the best draft this first episode, we'd appreciate it. I'm sure Joe Pay will. You can also listen to our podcast directly from the front page of the website. And lastly, if you click on Read Our Blogs, there's a link again on the front page. It'll take you to our weekly blogs. Tom and I take turns, for the most part, writing up our thoughts on what's going on in culture and politics in the world, and just reminiscing on various fun things like numbers.
Like numbers. We do have a Facebook page. You can communicate with us via Facebook. We also post video, photos. Lots of times we post links to some of our friends of the podcast, former guests, so you know what they're up to. You can also find our blog on Substack, and I would urge you to subscribe to us on Substack if you would. We're looking forward to a number of guests in season 7. We've got some musicians lined up in particular. I can't wait to talk to those people and hear what you think about those interviews. You've been listening to Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek. Thanks for listening.
Is there anything premier about what we do?
No. Well, then fucking go. Do it. And go.
Bloodshot Records. Good.
Good.
Gone.
Good night, everybody. I don't know how to do this. I really don't.